In today's show, we're talking about the San Antonio Spurs, the final team in our team preview series with the hosts across the Locked On Podcast Network, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. All right, final show in the team preview series. We do, later on in September, do a team preview series from a fantasy perspective where we look at ADPs, sleepers, busts, points league value, category league value. I do all of those as well. This is more of just a baseline, a grounding into what the team looks like with the hosts of the local shows, just to understand where they're at. This is the last one. If you want to be in, also, side note, the FBI LOFB World Cup, the biggest fantasy basketball competition that you can get into, 9-category league. There's an entry form down below. Are we picking 144 more people this week? And that is it for my entries. We did 144 last week. We did 144 this week. On the weekend coming up, I will give out those final 144 spots. So fill in that entry form. It's in the show notes on the audio side and also in the description here on YouTube. So fill it out, get a part of that fantastic tournament to see who is the best fantasy basketball player in the world. And now we're going to talk San Antonio Spurs. So to talk about the Spurs, he's back for, I think, probably the 7th year in a row. Jeff Garcia from the Locked On Spurs podcast. Jeff, welcome back.
Glad to be back. I'm ready to talk some Spurs basketball. I actually have some substance now that Wemby's here. There's actually something to talk about in San Antonio.
Yeah, it was a weird thing because I think when we started this, they were obviously rolling and they were boring from a fantasy perspective because there was just the same stuff all the time. It was, it was Kawhi, it was the end of Tim Duncan, it was all that sort of stuff. And then we went into this weird situation the last couple of years, and now we're starting a new era. So that brings us in to talk about what the team looks like, because of course they do get Victor Wembanyama at pick number 1. They also bring in Reggie Bullock and campaign in some salary dump trades. They draft Sidi Sissoko. There's Sir Jabari Rice, who comes in as a two-way guy, and Chetty Osman also came in a trade. And looking at the guys they lost, Romeo Langford, well, they didn't lose him because just no one wants him. Gorgie Jennings, probably too old. And then Keita Bates-Diop went to Phoenix. So it is a very, very clear upgrade for this team, Jeff. I don't think we need to talk a ton about Wembanyama. We will talk about him a little bit later. But just as a general rule, those first 3 names on that list, Wembanyama, Bullock, and Payne, they're all pretty significant upgrades. But how much better does it actually make this team?
I think a lot better. And I think the upgrade that nobody's talking about is the upgrade in experience for this young team. I think that's not getting enough attention. You have Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and all those kids from last year. They took a beating night in, night out, 9-game losing streaks, 4-game losing streaks. And I think their experience upgrade is going to be showing, and it's going to bear fruit next season. Now, as far as the other ingredients added to the mix, campaign is interesting. Do the Spurs have a point guard controversy? I don't think so. I think it's Trey Jones to lose right now. But campaign, he's a proven NBA veteran guard. The Spurs definitely needed to address that. They did that with campaign. I don't expect him to be the starting point guard on opening night. I think that's all Trey Jones. Sidi Sissoko, great young kid. Are we sure he's 19 years old? Because he's built like a Mack truck. I don't know if you've seen photos of him.
He's huge.
His body is NBA ready. I mean, this kid is a beast. Then you got the veteran injection, which I think the Spurs needed as well. Bullock and Osman. 3-and-D guys that the Spurs desperately needed. Overall, I think it is a great upgrade for the Spurs. Also, too, I think the Spurs now kind of have under the radar good depth now coming off the bench.
I agree.
Because there's something else that we're not talking about. I'm pretty sure, Josh, you'll get to it, is that starting five.
Yeah, and we talk about the NBA, and I've been talking about this a lot in the offseason. There is a lot of good players in the NBA, and even this team who got the number one pick, and we were like one of the worst 3 teams in the NBA all season. There are going to be players on this team who don't get to play every night who should. And that's just the way it is. There are good rotation players or good players with rotation value upside who aren't going to be able to play because of the strength of this team. The thing you touched on there with Trey Jones is really interesting to me because as soon as that Cameron Payne trade went down, I said the same thing. I said, I don't think Payne is going to start. I think it's going to be Trey Jones, but Payne could cut into the minutes. There are other people who think that Payne might just get immediately waived because the way that they re-signed Trey Jones, that money is backup point guard money. It is not starting point guard money. It's $10 million a year. It is absolutely backup point guard money. So, again, I don't think that Payne is going to start, but I also don't think that this means that there is 33 minutes a night every night there for Trey Jones. In fact, I think he's probably going to be quite capped by that situation. But you brought up Chetty Osman, who's on this list. Well, actually, I brought him up and then you talked about him. But someone's going to get cut on this team. In fact, more than one person has to get cut on this team. In fact, 3 players need to get cut off this roster. And I'm trying to project it out. I think Chetty might be one of them. Who do you think the 3 guys are that are going to get cut?
I think you nailed it on the head. I think Chetty is probably going to be one of them. And interesting enough, too, the Spurs were chasing him for years, since about 2017. They've reports that they had him always on their radar, that he's a guy they're looking at. They finally get him, and he might be the odd man out. Another guy I think could possibly do is campaign. He did not start off his fan relations well with the Spurs when he did a Instagram live video proclaiming how much Phoenix is this and that, and I miss it, and this and that, not even bringing up anything about the Spurs. So I'm pretty sure there'll be no love lost between the fan base and Payne if the Spurs do waive him. But the Spurs can also use the option of sending a player or two, to the Austin G League if they decide to keep their veterans and want to shake things up. There's that option. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously, for a Chetty Osman and a Reggie Bullock or a campaign. But yeah, the Spurs going to have to make some cuts. So the suspects right now are Osman and Payne.
I think Ken Birch is gone. I don't think there's any way that he.
Oh yeah. Does it even exist?
Yeah, apparently he's still on the roster. And the other one that I'd worry about, even though he signed a new contract, is Sadra Mamakelishvili, because when I look at the other guys on this list and the other guys on this roster, unless it is Payne or unless they find a way to dump like a Doug McDermott, I just not sure where Mamu fits in with Wembanyama, with Collins, with the re-signing of Barlow, with Charles Bassey. There's just a lot of different guys in that position, but that does bring me on to talk a little bit about Charles Bassey. We get to talk about injuries here. Bassey had that patella fracture as he was really starting to come into his own as a backup center last season. Do we know how his rehab's going? Is he ready to go for the start of the season?
Yeah, he's fine. I have a doctor come on Locked On Spurs quite often during the regular season. We talked about Bassey's injury. It was pretty much, a lot of smoke but no fire. It is an injury. Yes, it does need healing, but it's nothing like career threatening. It's nothing like that. It just takes. It's kind of like when they say you break your finger, nothing you can do. You're fine. You just gotta ride it out. No pain, nothing like that. So he's fine. The Spurs are very invested in him too. They signed him late last season. He is that athletic big that the Spurs have been looking for up until Wemby showed up. But nevertheless, great young kid, raw talent, has some NBA experience with the 76ers and of course, last season with the Spurs. The Spurs are very high on him. Not bad, when Wemby has to take a breather and then you got Bassey coming in. You still get that athletic big in the paint to man it. And of course, we're not even talking about Zach Collins yet. So, I think overall, Bassey's going to be fine. Devontae Graham, I see it on your thing. Okay, just make it very clear. That happened when he was a Pelican, okay? It didn't happen when he was a Spur, okay? Well, he just happens to be wearing the Spurs colors now. So there you go. But 2-game suspension, what can you do? Hopefully Graham doesn't do it again.
Yeah, so it was a DWI, I believe, that got him this 2-game suspension. So it's not impacting a huge amount of things. The thing with Bassey is Bassey's a really, really interesting player, especially from a fantasy perspective, a really good, I think, future backup center who can start in a pinch. The problem is, I also think they've got another really strong rotation backup center who can start in a pinch in Dominic Barlow, plus the guy that is probably going to be starting in Zach Collins. So we talk about rotations that like Bassie and Barlow, they're probably not going to be able to play together each night, which it's good for their development that they're there and they're going to be working to something. But in the end, like they're going to have to make a decision between those guys because I think there is a lot of value in both those players. We are going to get to your starting lineup in just a second, Jeff. Before we do that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. It's officially summer. Well, is it? It's not for me, but it is for you guys. And a new season means new clothes, but your clothes and your closet shouldn't be the only thing that is growing when you make those purchases. Now, you can also watch your cash back grow with each purchase with Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on purchases, whether it is clothes or it is grocery items, household items, whatever it is. Ibotta gets that cash back for you, and the average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. And you could use that money that you get back from Ibotta to go and buy more clothes. Fill that closet up and get things refreshed in the clothing department. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Go to the App Store or go to the Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, Ibotta, in the Google Play or the App Store and use the code LOCKED. Jeff, your starting five is actually slightly different to my projected starting five, and it's going to be slightly different to other people's projected starting five, which is also going to be different to me because there is a decision to make. Because there are six clear options, I think, here who could go into 5 spots. You've gone with Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, and Zach Collins. Okay, so Wembanyama is going to start. Devin Vassell is going to start. I don't think there's any argument about those two players. I think it is definite that actually not definite. I think Trey Jones is going to start, and I'm very, very confident that Zach Collins is going to start. We heard them say that Zach Collins was going to start before they got Wembanyama, of course, but it also makes sense that I think that they will play Wemby at the 4 for a lot of the time here. The big question is that final spot. You've gone with Keldon Johnson. I actually think it's going to be Jeremy Sohan, and I'll explain why. I think that Keldon was a guy that took on a high usage role last season. He wasn't particularly good at it, I didn't think. I thought his efficiency was quite poor. He doesn't offer a huge amount of things, but that also allowed the team to be bad and get into the position where they were. Ideally, his role is a guy that can come in, fill multiple positions off the bench, can help that scoring load of a bench unit, but his skill level or what he's able to do, I don't necessarily think that it makes a ton of sense long-term as a starter. Now, it is hard to look at a guy that averaged over 20 points per game and say you're a bench player, but then my take on this, Jeff, was that I think Keldon comes off the bench because I've never been a big fan of him as a player. But then that quote came out, which I thought was really, really curious, where they asked Keldon about how would you feel coming off the bench, and he was like, I understand that things need to happen on this team, and I do what needs to be done. And when that sort of stuff comes out, there are reasons that those questions get asked or they get framed in that way. It's because that discussion is clearly happening, and Keldon saying that he's open to it makes me think that there is maybe I'm wrong. At least there's a 50-50 chance that he is coming off the bench.
Yeah, I look at Keldon and I'm thinking like, what your highest paid Spur is going to come off the bench. I mean, that's a lot of money for a bench player. It is. But this is the situation where the Spurs are probably having a smile from ear to ear. Fine, you want to have Sohan start? Great. Yay. You want to have Keldon off the bench? Phenomenal. You want to flip it? Have Vassell coming off the bench? Sure, why not? This is a great problem the Spurs have, and something that San Antonio fans haven't had experience in quite some time because there have been some lean years. But this is a win-win-win-win-win situation for that final starting spot. But Keldon did express, that he would come off that bench. Good thing the Spurs have Manu Ginobili on staff, paid staff, the player development. So if he does have some issues or Keldon's kind of, can't get over it, Manu's there on staff to chat with him. So all in all, I think the starting five, whichever way you go, your way or my way, is kind of, again, under the radar, not too bad in the league. Yeah,
I think it is. And look, I get what you're saying. Yeah, Keldon, the highest paid player in this team, and it's true. He's got $20 million in salary for this season. But I also look at it, Jeff, and go, well, okay, Devin Vassell's contract is limited because he's a rookie and he would probably be getting paid more than that. Yeah. Victor Wembanyama would clearly be getting paid more than that at this point. Jeremy Sohan would probably be getting paid, maybe not quite that much, but not that far off it. You know what I mean? He's paid that much. He's paid the most, but it's. I don't think anyone would. Maybe they would. Would you think that he is the best player on this team currently?
Who's that again?
Keldon.
Who's that? Keldon? No, I think it's Devin.
Yeah,
I think Devin is the better player right now. Very deadly two-way player. Got hit hard with the injury, but supposedly last year.
He legit had an injury. Like, you don't have surgery without an injury. I think that when he came back from surgery, the soreness flare-ups may have been a little over-exaggerated, but he at least had something go wrong in January.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it's Devin. I think as of right now, we'll wait to see how Wemby pans out if he lives up to the hype. But as of this recording, I got Devin Vassell as the best player on the roster right now. You look at what he can do, play defense. One thing I think does not get enough attention is minimal turnovers. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Very careful with the ball. And can score, can hit the mid-range, can knock the three, is aggressive. And another intangible that I wish the national media can pick up on is how passionate he is with losses. Josh, I've been in that conference room with him, especially last year when they were just getting thumped over the head left and right. He got to the point where he was just so frustrated. He just kind of exasperated, threw his hands on the table. It was like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Like, what's going on? So high motor, highly competitive, tangibles, the skills, values the ball. Yeah, he's the best player.
I also think he's got some really questionable fashion choices. I saw him in Vegas. He was wearing like a knitted Dior,
I don't know what that was.
A knitted Dior vest that was like oversized over his shoulders with nothing underneath it. I go, bro, that's got to be itchy. Like, there's no way that's comfortable that you're wearing that around. But
that came off the Josh Lloyd fashion line. That's what I heard.
if mate, there is no way I wouldn't be allowed to. If I walked out of my hotel in Vegas wearing that, the guy at the door would be like, bro, come on. What are you doing?
Come on. Yeah, go back inside your room and change. Yeah.
Who do you think you are? The turnover thing is interesting because Vassell did change quite a bit of his game last season. He started to become more involved in the pick and roll and more of ball handling. And I think that's his next step. And I actually think he can do it at quite a high level. And that's
for sure.
When people look at Keldon scoring 20 points per game, I think that there's just way more upside in what Vassell can do. He can handle things. He can initiate. He can be a guy that is better at self-creating and creating for others. And I'm expecting a pretty big jump forward for him this season. The other thing that Jeff will look at this, people will look at this and go, well, why is Zach Collins starting? It's ridiculous. Just start Sohan, put Wembanyama at center. But again, you can confirm or deny this, but I'm pretty adamant that the Spurs are out here saying, like, we don't want Wembanyama starting at center. That is just not going to happen.
What every Wemby wants, Wemby's going to get. And he's made it very known, even in his playing days with the Mets 92, that he plays the 4.
Yep.
So whatever Wemby wants, Wemby's going to get. And if he wants the 4, he's going to get the 4. And that's why Zach Collins is going to be the starter. And not to mention, too, the fact that at the end of last season, Popovich even announced it. He goes, the only known starter we have right now is Zach Collins.
He did.
He flat out said it.
Now, that was before the lottery, but he did say it. And it does make sense because people look at Wembanyama and go, well, he's tall. Yes, he is. He is very tall, and he can protect the rim. But the guy can also dribble. The guy can also switch. The guy can handle the ball. He can do all of these things. He does not have to play at center just because he is tall. In fact, this huge mismatch that he has over guys playing the 4 with his ability to dribble and his ability to score and be an actual high-usage player, it makes him totally fine to play the 4. Now, probably at some point, his best position is going to be at center, but I just don't think it's going to happen. He'll play there, but it won't happen a huge amount. And I've already detailed the guys that can come in as backups and play some of those minutes, as in Bassi and Barlow. And I think actually, long term, I really like the Barlow-Wembanyama pairing as a guy. Barlow's only 20 and Wemby's 19. Like, I think those guys can grow together into a really strong pairing. That brings us to the rest of your rotation. Jeff, there's Sohan there, obviously, Campaign, Branham, Block, and Devontae Graham. A lot of guards in that mix, and of course, because you've got Collins and Wemby, who can play at the big man position. But this, again, highlights the depth in this team. Julian Champagny is not in this mix, who had an awesome summer league. Doug McDermott is not there. Bassi, Barlow, Blake Wesley.
They can go deep. They can go deep.
Look, Blake Wesley has sucked really. Like every moment he was terrible. Look, I think he's going to be all right, but he's been terrible. But
he needs more G League seasoning, that's for sure.
There are 14 guys on this team who, if they are a rotation player, you go, okay, that makes a bit of sense. Like, that's 14 players on a team that's as bad as they are that can play every night because there's just so many options here. Now, I think that trades can happen and Bullock or Payne might end up going to give Champagny more of these minutes, or maybe they don't prioritize Graham, but that's a reasonable guess at how they're going to run things. I think it's going to be a lot of sort of mixing and matching every night.
Oh, yeah. And when you sent me the questions to get ahead of this show, when you asked about the depth, I was like, sure, it's Good enough. Good. I mean, that's how great it is in the depth. Didn't even mention McDermott, Barlow, a lot of upside. Though he'll probably be towards the end of the bench next season. Devontae Graham, an offensive weapon the Spurs have at their disposal. So yeah, of the next five you put up there, I mean, I think another guy who can also have a great leap is Malachi Branham. What he showed, at least in minimal playing time in the summer league and towards the second half-ish of last season, this kid might be something.
Yeah, I thought he was all right at the end of last season. I think he's a little bit. The thing I worry about with Branham, Jeff, is that he's a little bit, and this is, it doesn't feel like I'm just shitting on Keldon Johnson. I'm not, but he's a little Keldon Johnson-ish, that he needs the ball in his hands to get a lot of scoring, because I'm not sure what else he's doing. Is he defending at a good level? Is he shooting threes? Is he getting them in at a high level? Is he passing? Is he helping teammates? Or does he really just need everything funneled towards him? And he did show out when he got those opportunities at the end of last season.
He did.
But he also had that game in Summer League where he shot 1 of 19, I think it was. And when the shot doesn't go in, everything else looks pretty rough. So that's my worry, that you need to be the absolute elite of the elite sort of a player who can be someone who demands that much usage of the ball to let those other things fade away. So while there are flashes from Branham, I need to see something a little bit different, a little bit more that shows that he can fit into other sort of situations. In terms, go ahead.
No, I was saying, another guy that I'm looking at, and he flat out said it in black and white to Polish media. Jeremy Sohan already put himself a goal for himself that he wants to be one of the top 3 Spurs next season. And you're like, okay, yeah, obviously, but no, you really think about it. Just if you're gonna break it down, who are the top players? It's likely going to be Wemby, Keldon, Devin, and Sohan. So if he wants to get into the top 3, he's going to show out versus one of those other guys. So he made it very clear. And here's the interesting thing, too. He told Polish media that he is aware that his shot needs work. So hopefully he's in that lab this summer and working on that.
Well, it's good to know that he's got eyes, because he shot 25% from 3 last season. Yeah. So, yeah, it definitely needs some work. But what he did do, and what was really impressive, and this is something that I always try to look at with players, it's about doing things that help a team. And Sohan was struggling so much from the line, Jeff. We saw that. And then he went to this weird-looking push shot sort of thing, right? This weird shooting stroke, and it looked stupid. It just looked goofy, but they went in. And he started hitting them at 74, 75% down the stretch, because he didn't care that it looked goofy. He didn't care about how his pride was affected by taking whatever role. He just said, this is actually going to make me better, and it's going to make the team better, so I'm going to do it. And his ability to defend, to handle the ball and pass, to up his usage when necessary, just to have scalability and just do things that the team needs, is what I think leads to a future really, really good player. His role is going to be interesting this season, because again, we don't know if he's going to start or what he's going to do, but it has to be shooting as the number one thing that he improves this season, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And especially with the 3-line. The 3-line was atrocious. It was just bad. And look, the promise is that he closed the season. If you look at the month-to-month progression from the field goal and the 3-point range, it got, he had your spikes and flows. So at least it's trending in the right direction. So that's a really good start. And you add the fact that he's self-aware, another good step in the right direction. Sohan hopefully will turn into one of the top. I hope so. I hope that training camp is intense. If he wants to jump into the top 3 Spurs, yeah, go for it. Take on Devin, take on Keldon, take on Wemby. Do what you got to do, distract him. Color his hair again. Do it, Sohan. Whatever you got to take to be one of the best.
It is going to be really intriguing to see how this all works out and how all these players fit together, because it is even though there's only one real major addition in Wembanyama, everyone else is there. The hierarchy of everything changes. You're not going to have these situations over the final 2 months where one guy's in, one guy's out. These guys are moving all over the place. It is a completely different scenario now. Not that I'm thinking Wembanyama is going to make them a playoff team, but he could. We have seen these sort of players. Luka Doncic comes in, these guys, Anthony Davis comes in, and they make their teams so much better immediately that everything has to change very quickly. Wait, we need to work out what we're doing here, because we don't have time to sit 2-3 years and develop, because Wembanyama's already added 15 wins to our team and we're off. Now, there's could be a lot of mistakes made in those situations, but it is something that they need to watch. A lot of players on this team, Jeff, that are under the age of 23, we've talked about quite a few of them. Let's quickly just touch on Wembanyama. We've touched a little bit on him in terms of the role and playing at the 4, but there are people who are going to be panicked about the way the Spurs handle him in terms of games played and all that sort of thing. How, and even minutes. How do you view that sort of stuff shaking out?
Nobody should be surprised. That's my view. I mean, if you're going to come on Locked On Spurs or this show and say, what, they rested him? Well, no, you know what? They're going to do that. That's just been the Spurs way ever since Pop and that regime took over the franchise. So no surprise there. The only thing that's going to break my heart is that one time that one kid and his family from France comes over to the Frost Center and he sits out. Oh, yeah, that's going to be heartbreaking. But it is what it is. That's what the Spurs do. They want to extend him. His shelf life. I'm not going to repeat. Everybody knows about players and his build don't last too long. Only rare exceptions. So if the Spurs are aware of that, Wemby's camp is aware of that. Yeah, he's going to sit out. But all in all, look, they're going to groom him. They're going to get him ready on his pace, on his time. Brian Wright did say, and Popovich as well. He punted it and kicked it in the field goal, saying like, hey. Wemby's going to be Wemby. He's not going to be TD. He's not going to be the Admiral. He's going to be Wemby. And if a 19-year-old kid, needs like a half a season to get things, they're going to let him do that. So I think we're losing focus too, that he's still a teenager. He's just a teenager. And he's slight of build. He's not ready-made like a Robinson was or a Duncan was. Heck, Duncan came in with a ready-made team. Wemby's coming in with a good team, but, still questions abound. So totally different set of circumstances, totally different player, totally different age range. So they're going to handle Wemby very carefully.
Yeah, I think that obviously Wembanyama wants to play. We know he is a fierce competitor. He will want to play. I think that they will get him, unless there is injury, he will play those 65 games needed to qualify for Rookie of the Year. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think you should be looking at 66 to 70 games played. Yeah. But there are some people out there, Jeff, who think he's only going to play 27 minutes, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he'll play his 30 minutes, 30 to 32, and play those 60, 70 games, and injuries notwithstanding. So I think there's maybe a little bit too much panic there, but that'll bring us into some of the other questions that we do have on this team, and we'll get to them. We'll get to them right now, because is this team, do you think, because part of the problem when people look at fantasy is this team started to play the shenanigans with the injuries. So when we head to the end of the year, while the 2024 draft isn't considered particularly strong, do you think this team is going to be in preservation mode down the stretch, and we're going to have Vassell and Keldon and Zach and Sohan all with phantom injuries popping up? Like, how do you think they're going to play this?
I think they're going to play all out. I don't think there's going to be any tanking. I don't think there's going to be anything like that. Look, they own how many draft picks? How many picks have they got?
Yeah, got
so if they want to move up,
the Hawks ones.
Yeah, they got a few of them. So if they want to move up in the draft, they have the means and the players to do that. This Spurs team is not out of the woods. Yes, they got Wemby, and yes, that helps them see the light at the end of the tunnel brighter. But they're not out of that rebuilt tunnel yet. I don't think they are. They're a lot closer. You get a Wemby, yeah, that'll do it. And of course, we'll see if he lives up to the hype. That's a lot of hype. My goodness, Josh. I'm at the point now, and I said on Locked On Spurs, where I have to now just see it. I hear it. He's got to walk the walk now. So we'll see what happens in a few short months. But no, I think the Spurs are still in rebuild mode. I don't think they're going to tank. They're going to play their best. I still argue that I think this team probably wasn't a 22-team win last season. We know what they were doing. We know what the plan was.
No, they played bullshit basketball down the stretch.
Yeah,
because they were fine at the start, and they played absolute bullshit basketball. They were the team. Now people complain about tanking in the NBA so much. This was the team that did it. The Blazers started to do it much. They did it for 3 months, and they played not only sitting their guys, they started playing basketball on the court that made no sense. And that's
or just be like Jason Kidd and just go ahead and flat out say it. Oh yeah, we tanked it. We threw the game to preserve our draft pick.
100%.
But the biggest moment I remember last year when I knew it was obvious, is when they were in Madison Square Garden. I was there on press row. It's a pressure game. So what was the final call Pops drew up? To play nothing but the rookies, Sohan, Wesley, all of them out there. Oh, and by the way, give Sohan the ball so he can inbound the ball and hopefully get the win. So yeah, it was very obvious.
Yeah, they were the team, and I called that out on the show quite a bit, and I understand why they did it. But like you talk about every other team who was actually playing their guys or going hard, that this team wasn't playing their guys and they were running nonsense on the court, which we understand why. But that all then brings me. You talk about Popovich throwing those rookies out there. He signed a gigantic extension. The man is very old. What do we make of this extension? Is this Like,
Yeah.
I did 5 years feels like a long time. Do you think it's like, well, maybe he'll coach 3 years and then move into a full-time front office role? Because he's already got that dual role now. Like, what do we make of this?
Yeah. I think it's more of like maybe his last contract kind of thing, that here is your hurrah. This is probably it for you. Let's give you a 5-year one. Let's pay you well. And if you want to bow out after year one of this new 5-year, sure, have at it. I mean, he's really, he said in his Hall of Fame speech, I mean, he's just all about his grandkids and getting that check. There was some truth to that, but I mean, he's living life, man. He talks about working out. Yeah, he talks about working out at press conferences. He talks about how he goes for treadmill runs and does this and that. So he's looking good. But I really believe this was kind of like the last contract for him. And he would be like, what is he, 74 right now?
He's 74, yeah.
70, yeah, he'd be 79
it's
if he plays it. I mean, if there's one coach stubborn enough to do it, it would be him. But I give it 3. I think 3.
I think there's a part of it in a couple of things. They looked at Monty Williams' contract as the richest coach ever, and they went, no, Pop is the GOAT. We'll give you that extra money. They're also like Greg, you see all this money. You've done this for so long. Mm-hmm. We don't expect you to coach all 5 years. If you only coach 2, we're still going to pay you the whole amount. Sure. It's like here's your final contract. Here's your golden handshake bonus situation. Mm-hmm. Look at you. You're back on top. You're the highest paid coach ever. You're the best coach ever. Coach however many years, you'll get it all anyway. Don't worry about it. That's how it feels to me. It's not like you must coach 5 years and then you'll get your 80 million. There's no way. There's no way. And be a consultant for 3 years and get the rest of that money or something along those lines is how I guess it's going to go. Who's a breakout candidate on this team, Jeff?
Breakout candidate. I'm going to go with Malachi.
Ooh, okay. So what do you think he improves from last season?
I think confidence. I think when you look at his rookie year summer league and then throughout his rookie year, sometimes there was a confidence thing, a mental thing. He said it himself too many times that he's got to get that confidence going. He looked very confident in the summer league, in this past one. So I'm looking at Malachi to take the next leap. He's probably going to get a bump in minutes as well. He's probably going to be one of those first guys off the bench. And I'm confident. I saw a little bit more defensive awareness in the summer league. Again, very small sample size, but at least there was some attention to that. So if that's any indication of where he's shifting his focus, I mean, obviously we know he can score. He's a 3-level scorer. We get that, but I'm looking at Malachi. I think he's the guy.
What about on the other side of things, a regression candidate?
A regression candidate. That's a good one. Oh man, that's a tough one. I got 2 maybe. Bassie maybe.
Okay.
Maybe Bassie, simply because Wemby and Zach are likely going to get the bulk of the minutes. Maybe that throw him off his rhythm a bit. Maybe Keldon, not necessarily intentional, but because if he does come off the bench, statistically there will be a regression. But no, I don't. That's a good question.
For a team that's as deep and young as they are, I think there are a couple. I think Keldon's one of them. I think he scored 22 points per game last season. The year before that, he scored 17. I think that it's totally reasonable that he goes back and scores 18 or 19 points per game, because last season he saw his usage jump to 28%, and 28% usage on Keldon Johnson is just not anything close to what a good team would do. So that's going to have to drop back. The other one is Doug McDermott, who was starting 2 years ago and probably not going to be a rotation player this season, and I think he's going to take some steps back. But who's the most likely player to be traded?
Well, okay. Well, let's go with Bullock. Let's go with Cameo. Let's go with Osmond. Let's go with McDermott. Let's go. The usual suspects I think already. But I think the Spurs are not going to shake up their foundation a lot because they've been on record to say they want to see how this team cooks together. So we'll see what type of chemistry that moves on. But obviously, a lot of the veterans, and I hope they don't deplete the veterans, because I think this team needs a veteran presence like a Bullock and a McDermott to steady the waters. I know you mentioned about Gorgie Dang to start the show. Yeah. He was one of the guys I hope they kept on, not necessarily because of his play, but because just of that locker room presence.
Him. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Even if he just was the 10th, 11th man off the bench, I don't care. I wanted him to stay there. And he's an international big, which I thought would help Wemby tremendously.
The problem is they have 20 guys on their roster at the moment, so you can't even be the 11th guy. You're gonna be the 21st guy. But he is a legendary locker room guy. That's why that's why they brought him back last season, exactly for that reason. All right, let's look at wins. Last season they were 22-60 with the worst net rating in the NBA. Again, there was tomfoolery for 3 months on this team, so we don't take huge attention to that.
For a few months.
Yeah, it was basically Christmas and went, all right, we're packing this.
It was opening night tip off. All right, here we go.
Oh, they won those. Didn't they start 3-1 or something?
Yeah, they started. Yeah, they started off.
And then it was like, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah,
so
dive,
Fanduel's got him at 28.5, Jeff, which is a big jump forward. And you've gone ballsy. You've gone 35 wins, which is totally plausible with whatever impact Wemby can bring. I've at 27-55, just because I think the other West teams are getting better as well. But 35, does that put them in the play-in mix, do you think?
I think it does. I mean, I think 35's got a team into the play-in this past year.
Yeah, well, definitely in at least, if not last year, the year before. There's been some of those teams that have gotten in with that number. Yeah.
I really believe that this team, you factor out the tanking element last season, they don't win 22. I think they get 27, 28 up in there. Now, you inject Wemby, you inject a healthy Vassell, you inject just a healthy overall squad. Like, oh no, Sohan doesn't have dry skin. Don't send him out. You take away that as well. You bring in Popovich, who's renewed contract. There's a lot of energy in the locker room. There's positive energy throughout the city. I think the fans are going to feed this team at home games. So I think home games are going to be very fun to watch and be there this season. So 35 wins, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think this team is really going to take a great leap forward. But again, I don't peg them as a playoff team. I mean, something disastrous would have to happen, like Luka gets hurt or something like that, but some major has to happen. But no, I think they will be vying for that 10th spot, play-in spot in the West.
I think it's totally possible, right? I think that there is. We talk about prospects coming in. I always use the Luka example of guys that come in and they make their team not too good too quickly, but they also make them way better than anticipated. And I think Wembanyama is that sort of player who can come in and actually elevate this team and jump them up that much. The part of the reason why I'm a little cautious about going that high is, it's hard to improve that much, but also I think that there are so many other teams in the Western Conference that got better, and the wins have to come from somewhere. Not everyone can just jump up 10 wins, so trying to balance that is tough. But again, if Wemby is as good as we think he's going to be, they could easily be a 30, 35 win team. I don't think there's any real discussion that that's not a possibility. It's just it's going to be hard to do.
They got depth now. Last year, maybe they didn't have that depth. Now they have that depth. So the drop off in the second unit coming in is not going to be too bad this upcoming season.
Yeah, the depth is good. They got guys for free. They got Bullock for free. They got Osman if he makes the roster for free. They got Payne for free, and they just can be useful players on this team if they are pushing to get those extra wins. Now, Jeff, the last part of this show is we're going to have a little bit of fun, and like a few of the hosts across the network, you have somehow managed to escape the phase and the craze that is grid games across all sports across the offseason. So we're going to play a Spurs grid game here. We've got the Spurs, and what we want to do is we want to find players who have played for the Spurs and for one of these 5 other franchises. So Spurs and Suns, we want to do Spurs and Grizzlies, Spurs and Bucks, Spurs and Magic, Spurs and Nuggets. And in order for you to get the best score possible on this, you want to find players who have played small amounts of games for either franchise. We're going to take the smallest number, whether it's 400 games for the Spurs and then they play 5 games for the Suns. We want that. We count that 5 games in terms of our score. So we want the lowest score we can get. The last category we have is players who have had 100 blocks in a season playing for the Spurs, and then we want to get the best score out of that. You look for the player who's played the fewest career games for San Antonio, who got 100 blocks in a season. So I'll help you out here. You haven't played these games before. I'll give you some hints as we go along. Which one do you want to attack first? Which team
let me get this. Yeah, let me get this one out of the way. Can we get Sandro for the Bucks?
Sandro for the Bucks is a very, very good start because, of course, he has played for both of those teams. Mamukelashvili played only 19 games for San Antonio, so all of the scores are on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being the best. Mamu, as I just have to type his name in because it's a long one, it's going to take me a little bit of extra time. That gives you a score of 5 out of 100, which is very, very good, Jeff, because he only played 19 games for San Antonio. So there you go. That is a great start. Okay. That's the idea of the game. All right, where we going next?
Let me think. Yeah, while you were talking right now, I'm looking at the board. I'm like, which team do I go to next? Let's start. Okay, let me go with the Magic. Give me Ron Mercer.
Wow, Ron Mercer. Okay, let's go. Magic, Ron Mercer. Let's go to my list here. Jeff, you are really on fire here. That is a pretty good score as well. Ron Mercer did play for both teams. He didn't play huge amounts of games for both teams. You get a 10.2 on that one. That's a pretty good score. He played 39 games for San Antonio and 31 for the Magic, so that is a very good score there. I'll tell you who would have been another really interesting score. Okay. Former Pelicans GM Dell Demps played 16 games for San Antonio, and he played 2 for the Magic. I have no recollection of those 2 games that he played for the Magic, but apparently he did. And another one you could have gone for, which I don't think many people would have got, Dominique Wilkins played for both the Spurs and the Magic. That's right, wow, that is, I completely forgot that. All right, what else? What else are we going
now my hot streak's over because now I'm lost now. Okay, I'm gonna take a stab at this one. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I'm gonna go with the Nuggets next.
Okay. Yep.
Man, I hope my memory's correct.
Let's have a look.
Avery Johnson. Did Avery play with the Nuggets for like a hot second?
Avery Johnson played a lot of games for the San Antonio Spurs, Jeff. So
we know. You want to go right? We want to go minimal games on both ends.
No. Just small amounts for one team. So,
small amounts for one team. Okay.
Avery Johnson did play only 72 games for the Denver Nuggets, so you got that. Okay. It's a 44.94 because there are so many other guys who played smaller amounts, but it's still a really good score. Interestingly, there is like 61 players in history that have played for both of these franchises. How about Monty Williams playing 1 game for the Nuggets? I don't remember that 1 game there. Who else is on this list? Who else is on this list that's an interesting guy that would have been a low score? There's so many random names here that I've never heard of. Tim Kempton. Don't know who that is. He played 10 games for the Spurs.
Wow.
Oh, but JaMychal Green would have been a good one with his 4 games in San Antonio. Yes. That would have been a good one. Yeah. And then there's... honestly, Jeff Crompton. Who is Jeff Crompton? He played 14 games for the Spurs. Shout out to Jeff if he's listening. All right, what are we going to go to next? We've got the Suns, we've got the Grizzlies, and we've got the 100 blocks in a season.
All right, well, I'm stumped here, so I'm going to... this is not my official answer. I was going to go with JaMychal for Memphis, but he played a lot of games for Memphis.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
A lot of games.
Oh, yeah, if you want to go for the small... You want to go if there's a small number there, but yeah... Memphis.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I know with the Spurs, he didn't play that much. So I'm going to go with JaMychal Green with the Spurs not playing as much.
That is a fantastic answer. And this is what always seems to happen on these shows, Jeff, as I go out and I give out these names and I say, look at this guy. And then I forget that he also played for one of the other teams and gives away a great answer. That's a 0.79. That is your best score there, JaMychal Green. For the Spurs and the Grizzlies, we've got the Suns to go. And I'm just going to go have a look at the list of the Suns players and see who is on that list.
So we're going to the Suns next?
Well, you can go to the Suns, or you can go to look at the 100 blocks in a season.
Can you repeat the 100 block thing again? Okay. I'm confused on that.
All right, so it's players who have had 100 blocks in a single season playing for the Spurs. That is, there have been, I'll tell you how many of those guys have been in history. There have been 14 players that have blocked 100 shots in a season for the Spurs. And to get the lowest score possible, you want the guys who have played the fewest games for San Antonio in their career. So, for example...
Can I take a stab?
Go ahead.
Derek White
did not block 100 shots. Okay. But he would have if he had stayed healthy, I think, in those seasons. But he did not. All right, so that was tough. That is tough. There's only 14. Those ones get tough. So we'll X that one out. But I'll tell you the answers there. Obviously, as I lose my voice, Tim Duncan was the worst answer because he played 1,400 games. That would have given you the highest score. But Rasho Nesterovic had 100 blocks in a season.
Sure. Yeah,
Dave Corzine, George Gervin, Will Perdue had 100 blocks in a season. Jakob Poeltl, obviously with 100 blocks in a season, and he only played 300 games or so for the Spurs. So the last one we look at, Jeff, is the Suns. There are a few names there that are sort of obvious. I think there seems to be a large amount of Australian players on this list for some reason, but there are a few obvious ones and a few not so obvious ones.
Jock Landale.
Jock Landale is one of the Australians, and it wasn't the main one that I was thinking of. But Jock Landale is there. He obviously started in San Antonio, was traded as part of the DeJounte Murray deal, and then played well for Phoenix last season. That's a 20.62. Aaron Baines was the original one that I was thinking of on that list. You also had Vinny Del Negro, played 38 games for Phoenix.
Wow.
Steve Kerr played 26 games for Phoenix. Hidu Turkoglu played for both teams at some point.
Wow.
And who else is on? Sean Marks Brooklyn Nets GM legend Sean Marks played 22 games for Phoenix and 48 for the San Antonio Spurs. And Jeff, that'll bring us to the end of today's show. So tell people what is happening over at Locked On Spurs at the moment.
Yeah, by the time we're listening to the show, our latest episode is out. It is a fan episode. A lot of fans are griping about the other side of the Wemby effect, and that is skyrocketing ticket prices.
Ooh.
So a fan is going to come on. He's going to give the pulse of the fan base regarding that topic, and then we're going to react to the latest Spurs schedule. A lot of fans are upset about which games Austin, Texas got, and they're not happy about that. So it's out right now. Well, hopefully by the time you're listening to this episode with Josh. But yeah, check it out, Locked On Spurs.
Go and check out Locked On Spurs. They're going to be a very interesting team. Of course, all eyes on Wembanyama, but lots of other interesting players on this team. Jeff, thank you once again for coming on Locked On Fantasy Basketball. And that will do it for me today and for the team preview series. We're going to have other shows coming this week. Let me just give you an idea of what I am doing. I'm doing a show later this week. Later this week. I'm recording this on Monday. This show comes out Thursday. I'm doing a show on players who are going to see big changes in minutes and usage. I'm going to do a show on comparing players in points leagues versus category leagues and the way we navigate looking at site pre-ranks and ADP data and the guys we've got to be really cautious of. So that is coming later this week as well. You've seen a mock draft earlier this week. I hope you've enjoyed all of that. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.